because then we know that it's going to go into the official record. And the other reason for both sides you want to do that is that when this is all over, if either side or even property owners in the neighborhood want to appeal the decision, they need to appeal it on the record that was here. And if we have a record with a lot of people talking over each other, it doesn't work for either side. So under the procedural rules, generally those that have wanted it, we've asked them to go ahead and sign in. Sometimes people later want to say something, and if you request that, that's not a problem. I'll allow people to speak, but we'll need you to state your name. And I don't necessarily need to know somebody's home address, but I would like to know whether you're a resident of Litchfield Park. Because frankly, if you're not a resident of Litchfield Park, you're welcome to be here, but it's not as germane to you as it would be somebody else. And lastly, in reading through, and I've read through all of the written comments before tonight, and I can see from reading through them, there's some hard feelings here and there. And one of the things that I don't want to have happen, because in a couple of the letters, people were talking about it, what was a hearsay, that somebody on the block told them what somebody else said. I'm not going to allow any of that. So if your testimony, unless you personally have knowledge of it, we don't want to hear about what the person in the fourth house that couldn't be here today. It's not how it works. We want to keep it orderly, make sure everybody gets to speak. So the way we do these, when we get started here in a minute, I'm going to ask the staff to give their report first. And the reason I do that is that allows all of you then to know the staff's reasoning. Following that, the applicant will be allowed to speak. And then following that, I will start with the next door neighbor that we'll call her the other party because of where she lives. And then beyond that, anyone else that wants to speak will work her way too. And finally, the applicant gets a second shot under the rules to kind of, because they have the burden of proof, to do this. So we're going to try to keep it as orderly as we can, try to keep it moving along, so that my goal is that when we leave here tonight, generally speaking, someone's going to be unhappy. Maybe everybody's going to be unhappy. But I don't want anybody saying that they didn't get a fair chance to present their case. So with that, I'm going to turn now and ask the staff if they would give us their summary.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, members of the board. John Froke, I'm the city planner for Litchfield Park. I've got a PowerPoint with some slides and information for both the Board of Adjustment as well as the applicant and the audience. So thank you for the introduction for the procedure for the Board of Adjustment. So we're here tonight, May 4th, 2023. We do have one variance application. This is located at 14879 Aldea Circle. The property owners requested a variance to allow an existing pergola to remain in the side yard. The variance request is to allow the pergola to basically have a 0-foot setback in what would be the required 5-foot side yard setback. And I'll show some maps and provide some additional information in a moment. The existing pergola, as I said, is located in a portion of the west side yard, so the lot is oriented north-south, and I've got a couple of maps and an aerial phone to show you. This is a vicinity map just to provide some context. The arterial street to the north is Camelback Road. The curve here, obviously Litchfield Road, so we're over here in the western part of the city, and here's the subject property. The golf course is just to the east. And here's an aerial photograph. So there's a nice open space buffer that's part of the homeowners association. This is the subject property outlined in the blue. This is a map from the county assessor's office. As you can see, north-south orientation, like I mentioned, south side of the street. And the applicant's provided a plot plan, site plan, which I'll show in a moment. A little bit of context. So the site is part of the Village at Litchfield Park subdivision. It's lot number 379. Daniel provided some background for me earlier in the week. This was a project or subdivision was originally approved by we approved zoning by ordinance in Litchfield Park. And it was approved by ordinance 04-99 back in 2004. So subdivision's not quite 20 years old yet. There is a pergola in the rear yard and also in the side yard. The applicant did complete construction, and both Daniel and I are planning and zoning department. The code compliance department did issue a notice based on a complaint a while back. I'll get to the site plan in a moment. So there's two pergolas in question. It's depicted on the site plan. Pergola A is the one that's depicted on the applicant's site plan, shown in the rear yard. And then pergola B, which is the cause or the need for the variance, is in the west side yard. Pergola A does meet the rear yard setback and it's fine. However, pergola B does not meet the side yard setback, which should be 5 feet. So again, the applicant, through a due process, is asking for a variance to allow the existing pergola to remain. Here's a plot plan. It should have been oriented towards the north, so just if you flip it around, north would be to the south. So normally a site plan would have north towards the top of the page. So just orientation for the board as well as everybody in the audience. So north would be, and the street would be down here towards the bottom of the sheet. The two pergolas are outlined in red. Pergola A, as I mentioned, is okay. And pergola B is the north-south oriented pergola that's the cause for the variance. This is a site photograph from the applicant. This is in the backyard facing north, so you can see the home towards the front of the photo, and then the pergola in question. So we're facing north. This would be the west property line, and then the pergola is right there. So the other pergola that's in the rear yard created shade pattern is the other pergola just off the front. As the board is aware, and this is the way it is in most cities in Arizona, is in order to grant a variance, there are certain findings or conditions that need to be met or demonstrated by the applicant. In Litchfield Park, these are pretty standard. There are 4 findings that need to be met. This is right out of the zoning code. So in order for the variance to be granted, the findings should be met. So there's finding A, B, C, and D, and I'll go into those in a little bit greater detail in a moment. With respect to the actual request and our staff analysis, so generally with a variance, there needs to be some kind of a special circumstance. And so when the subdivision plat was created back in 04, or thereabouts after the zoning was approved by City Council, you can see the lotting pattern is pretty uniform throughout the subdivision, mostly north-south lots, and they're pretty much rectangles. So there might be some oddly configured lots. The subdivision is relatively flat. Both Daniel and I have gone through the subdivision, we're familiar with it. So there's not really a lot of topography per se. And usually there's some kind of special circumstance for a lot, like either a hillside or a drainage, natural drainage feature of a wash or something like that. We don't really see a hardship with or special circumstance with with the lot. So I'll go into that. These are again, the 4 findings, the special circumstances in item number A, or conditions applying to land, building, or use referred to in the application, which does not apply to other properties in the district. And then we've got an analysis on the next slide I'll get into in a moment. B, that such special circumstances were not created by the owner of the applicant. In other words, it shouldn't be self-imposed. C, that the authorization of the variance is necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of substantial property rights. And then finally, finding D is that the authorization of the application will not be materially detrimental to persons residing and working in the vicinity, to adjacent properties, to the neighborhood, or the public welfare in general. With respect to finding A, kind of touched on this, we really find that the lot is similar to others. There's not really anything unusual about the lot. It's pretty much a rectangle, similar to other lots in the neighborhood. We don't really feel that finding A is met. Finding B, we were unable to find a special circumstance with respect to the property lot configuration. We feel it's uniform in size and similar in shape to other lots within the subdivision plat. Hence, we don't really feel that finding B is met. And then finding C, that this relates back, I'll flip back to the other slide. So obviously we live in the Sonoran Desert. It's going to be getting hot here. A lot of sunshine in Phoenix. Most people want shade, and that's understandable. So finding C, there are other options for outdoor use of the lot with pergola A that's in the rear yard. That pergola is very well done. I think it probably provides a lot of shade to the back portion of the house and that portion of the rear yard. We don't feel finding C is met. Other properties in the zoning district have similar conditions, if you will. Most of the homes in Litchfield Park all have patio covers of some sort. I know a couple months ago at Design Review Board, we presented a couple of projects where people were adding additional shade structures in the backyard. So that's understandable in Litchfield Park. And then finally, finding D, if the variance is granted, it would allow pergola B to remain within the side yard setback to the lot to the west. We feel that it's a pretty strong visual encroachment to the individual that owns and lives in the property to the west. And again, we don't really feel that this finding is met relative to that particular pergola. In our conclusion and recommendation, we recommend denial on the variance. We don't really feel that the criteria is met for the board to approve it. Relative to the findings, if the board agrees, we are suggesting that the pergola B be removed within 90 days of the board action. The other pergola could remain and provide that enjoyment for the neighbors, meets the setbacks, etc. So that's the staff presentation, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that the board might have tonight.
Okay, do any of the board members have questions for staff?
I do have a question, actually. I thought that in the past we had discussed a similar variance over on Salahia, the ones that are, it's Old Litchfield, I guess. Somebody was asking for a variance to do a side yard pergola. And I thought that at that time we talked about it being measured from actual post, basically, so that there could be an overhang. I thought that you had suggested one time maybe like having an overhang as an option there because they could not build into the setback. So I guess my question is, what's the precedent for where we measure the setback? Is it from, the ground, the farthest overhanging point to the ground, or is it from the base of the structure?
Through the chairman, board member Dudley, the scenario or the lot that you're mentioning predates me and Daniel, so I'm not familiar with that particular one. Typically, the building official would look at the vertical supporting post or column, as that has to have the setback, and there is some allowance for overhang. I'm not sure that really applies in this particular variance.
Okay, because I mean, from the picture, it looks like the one we're trying to get a variance from is actually over off of their structure, their building, so it doesn't even have any support posts or so.
Chair Board, there are some other photos that we have that we've seen that it looks like this obviously is taken from the applicant's property, but it looks like the edge face of this pergola actually encroaches onto the airspace of the lot to the west.
Okay.
And frankly, we don't feel that's appropriate.
Okay. So then my next question is, like, so you're recommending that they take it completely down, but I'm wondering, like, is there, it looks like this might be a material that could just be cut back a little bit. Is there, would it then be meeting code? I mean, would they be alleviated from the need for a variance if it was cut back at all, or?
We would, board chair, board member Dudley, we would want to discuss that with the building official. It does look like it could be cut back and at least not encroaching on the neighbor's property. We're not certain what the building code would be for that. We could check with the building official and follow up with the board of adjustment.
I think normally it would have been overhang structure, probably the roof overhang, so the main structure is set right on the setback line, and then the roof, like a normal roof overhang, would be allowed to overhang on the setback line. But I don't know.
Right, that's what I was going to get at. Is typically in the design, you need your permit. It's going to give you a certain overhang, whether it's 2 feet or 3 feet typically. And this one, it looks like 2 feet, and then you have but you have 5 feet from the vertical wall. Rachel, right? You have 5 feet from the vertical wall to the property line, and that you can't build into that. But the overhang is based on what the house already has. This was added on, and I'm really torn about this because I understand in what I've read is that, and help me out here, John, this was approved by the HOA?
Board member, I'm going to refer that question to Dan.
To the chair, board member Ruddock. The applicant has stated at the beginning that it was approved by the HOA, but staff has requested that they won't be able to receive that today.
I guess I should turn on my mic. Yeah, I want to see the approval of the HOA. Because damn, somebody needs to be responsible for this, and this is first time.
When the applicant presents, they need to shine more light on that for us as well.
Okay.
Before, let me ask a question. I noticed in one of the letters from one of the objecting people, it indicated that on the quote, first day of construction, the city issued a stop work order. Is that true?
To the chair, yes, my understanding is the first day of work was commenced, it was noticed, and the building official went over and gave a stop.
Okay, and that was some, how long ago was that? What do the records say?
Yeah, last year, summer.
Okay, so it was at the beginning of construction. Okay. All right, are there any other questions for us?
There's another comment, it's like when these subdivisions are kind of approved, they're approved, their setbacks and their whole design is kind of approved with like a package of designs, like we approved several different elevations and stuff, and generally the plan and elevations are approved at the same time as the plating and stuff, so you kind of have an idea. So that's kind of where maybe a smaller setback is allowed based on the design of the house. So maybe it has a shorter overhang. It's 25 feet that are pretty tight. So this is another thing that was considered when the whole subdivision was approved.
Okay. Okay, any other further questions for staff? No? Okay, at this point we'll go to the applicant. Please go to the mic, introduce yourself, and do your presentation.
Mr. Chair, thank you, Board. I would just like to put on the record that we did not receive any letters, packets, or information about this meeting until 7:01 and 7:03 p.m. tonight via email. So I just wanted to make sure that that was on the record. We want to thank you for your time and respectfully request the Board consider granting a variance to allow Pergola B to remain in place at our residence. We now understand that the encroachment may not comply with the current city zoning regulations, but at the time of construction, we did not. If we had it to do over again, we would have applied for city approval prior to that construction. From day one, we falsely assumed that we only needed HOA approval for our project as it dealt with the border of a shared wall and matched several other homes within the community. We applied and gained what we thought was the necessary approval for our project and did not intend to commit a code violation with the city. To our surprise, we did receive a stop work notice on the entire project after Pergola B was already constructed. It was finished on the first day. I read the stop work notice. It threatened prison. So I did not allow work to continue on the project, as I had just read from the front letter from our neighbor. So I just wanted to put that on the record as well. To our surprise, that stop work notice, we then worked with the city and obtained approval and a permit for Pergola A. However, Pergola B was still contested. This delay was initiated only by the complaint filed by our neighbor and has now cost us over $6,000 due to rising material, permit, and labor costs. Also, since Pergola A and B were originally the same project and designed as such, removing the Pergola B portion would negatively affect the aesthetic of the property and the project. We have no doubt that the only reason another complaint was filed against Pergola B was due to the neighbor's complaint. This is a fact acknowledged by one of the city officials when serving our stop work notice. I said if it wasn't for the complaint, we wouldn't be here. As multiple other properties within the city of Litchfield Park, which violate the same side setback under the microscope today. However, they're not required to go through the same process because their neighbor filed no complaint, not because they're in compliance. Although we could provide addresses in violation, we're not vindictive people and fully support the right for others to use their property as they see fit, and it's not to the detriment of the community. We'd like to emphasize that the pergola has no impact on our neighboring properties, and multiple neighbors also support the pergola remaining in place. However, we also acknowledge that it doesn't matter anymore, as the highlighted issue is a city issue and not a neighboring issue. The pergola is an important feature in our backyard, providing shade and a gathering space for family and friends. Coming from a family with a long history of skin cancer, having several spots on my arms to prove it, the shade provided over my barbecue grill and outdoor kitchen protects me as I use that space. We understand the importance of adhering to zoning regulations, and we are not requesting a blanket 0-foot setback for the entire property line, but only the 23-foot section of pergola B. And we ask your approval. We do acknowledge that the staff has recommended otherwise, due to the request not meeting all 4 factors required for a variance. However, serving 20 years in the Air Force showed me that leadership has the power and authority to look at more factors than just the black and white. Thank you very much, Chair Dudley, for bringing up an example of that. In certain situations, this is a perfect example. If it were only a staff decision, we wouldn't even be here. We ask that you please sympathize with our situation and that the Board of Adjustments grant us the necessary approval to allow the pergola to remain in place. I think I addressed the 2 things from the letter that I did get to read after I received it after the meeting. But we did stop work as soon as we were served the notice. I wanted to make sure that that was on the record. And we do have HOA approval, which was submitted with our application. And I can get that for you. Again, I did not bring it tonight because I already have provided it to the city. So thank you for your time and appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. Can I ask a quick question? In our packet, one of the photos that was in there, and I don't know whether it was one you presented or one neighbor's, can you tell me, is that your neighbor's backyard or is that your backyard? I'm looking at.
Can I see that picture again, Chair?
Yeah. I don't know if we have.
That is our neighbor's backyard.
Okay, so it's the neighbor's backyard, it's on their side of the wall, and this is the overhang.
So if you go there, you can drop a plumb, and it would be in the center of the wall. And if that's not the case, Stacy, then we apologize for that. That's what we had the installer do, as to not encroach on her property. So I would fully support if that truly is the case, which we've never been asked to inspect that portion. We only did it when it was installed, that we had no intent to encroach on her property, only to use our property. And if that is the case, then we do apologize and we would remedy that.
Okay. Now, it was the one, a lot of these photos for me, I'm not an engineer, nor do I have any artistic talent, so I'm not a visual. So if I see something like this, I'm not always able to tell whether we're talking about 2 feet or 6 feet. This just looked to me like it was protruding over the wall into the neighbor's space. So in any event, at this point, we should let the neighbor, I'm sorry, I don't remember the neighbor's name.
Am I unhappy? Can I speak as well, or
Sure.
is that okay? I'll let them. My name's Carrie. I'm sorry if I seem emotional, just this is really caused a lot of heartbreak. And Stacey, I never wanted it to get to this point. And I'm a Christian and love my neighbor. I am sorry that we've even got down here to this point. And we will be willing to remedy whatever we have to do. But this has really caused my kids, I'm sorry, the sign in the front, we had to explain, they had to ask, what did we do to the neighbor? And to this day, I am sorry for this causing so much heartache to you. As my husband has said, all we want is the opportunity to enjoy a pergola that protects our family from skin cancer, and to enjoy something that a lot of the neighbors in our community already do have. And I had included these pictures to Daniel, but I would just like to show you just a few just within our block, literally 300 feet of different pergolas that do encroach. And when I sent these pictures to Daniel, he did tell me, please do not include any addresses. And I now know the reason why. It's because obviously then it becomes a city issue. And we don't want to get any of our neighbors in trouble. We have no, we want to love my neighbor. We don't want any of these issues. So if it's okay if I could just show you a couple of these pictures from our neighboring properties. Just for the record, that house, these are just within 300 feet of our block.
What is that encroaching on?
That's on the back fence. That's
Okay, so is it like within 10 or 15 feet of the back property line?
It has the lattices that are at the same level as our fence. That means that it's up to the fence line, it encroaches.
Is that the property line?
Yeah, so our pole that you were speaking of is within the 5 feet. It's the lattices that are at the top that have created an issue for our neighbor.
Right.
And so right here is a pergola, and this hangs over the wall, and this is the park. So this actually goes over the wall. And obviously I'm not including addresses. These pergolas on a street in our neighborhood are on the wall. This one backs up to the fence line.
Yeah.
I sent over 30 to Daniel, but he didn't include any, I don't believe, in the packet. I don't know why, because I had asked for them to be included. This one, right up to the fence line, and that can be seen if you drive along Campbellback. You can see that clear as day. These are all not within 5 feet setbacks of the wall.
Can I just point out though, of all these photos,
Yeah.
you don't know how much of an encroachment it is, whether it's 5 feet, 4 feet.
I just did it, you're correct, from my line of sight, from the pictures when I went in the neighborhood to take, I could see from my visual, like you, I don't know the exact measurements, but in my view, they were not 5 feet from the wall, from where either corner touches. So these were just a couple.
Couple, it looks like a bunch.
I'm sorry. I have probably 15 more, but I didn't. If you just drive through the villages, it's. So I guess to us, I don't want to get any of our neighbors in trouble. If this was just, shocking when I've approached quite a few of them and did ask them if they received any type of variance or approval, and they said no. And then this was from my in-laws' house, and it encroaches right to the fence line of the shared wall. And then I just wanted to give, because I didn't believe, this was the street view of our house, of the pergola. I don't know if that was.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, the street view. And then this is our, the park view, just so you can kind of get a better view. Yeah. So I just wanted to put those on the record, just to include those pictures, but thank you for letting me see.
We'll give those to them.
Yeah. Yes.
Daniel, you're gonna be busy.
Okay, at this point, let's have the opponent speak if she wishes.
I'm Stacy. I am the neighbor to the west where the pergola is coming onto the property. As you can see by the pictures that I submitted, whether or not it's directly on top of the wall, from when you're walking under it, it appears that it's coming over into my yard. It encroaches in my yard. I know that they just said to me they're sorry. They've never in the 12 months come to me and said they were sorry or asked if it was okay to build something that comes towards my house. They were issued a stop order last May. I have pictures of what was there at that stop order. It was not completed. It was completed after the stop order was put in place. It intrudes into my yard and diminishes the enjoyment in my yard. When it rains, water comes off of it onto my wall and into my yard. I built this home 10 years ago. I'm the original owner. They moved in 4 years ago. There were a bunch of letters that were submitted, and a lot of them are from their friends or family members. The one in particular addresses things in my yard saying I'm not the homeowner, that it's an elderly couple that lives there. Talks about oleander bushes that have nothing to do with this, and those were only there in a pot for like 24 hours until they were planted somewhere else in the yard. And in that time, they called the city about them, they called my pool company, they got over the fence at my landscapers, and then submitted all these letters about them. So I just am here asking for the rules to be followed, because the codes are put into place for a reason. I've had a lot of work done in my backyard, and every single contractor worker that comes to my yard, because they have to come through that side, comments on that pergola, says it's not to code. When I was having a pergola designed, they told me it couldn't go past my house. And so I had it permitted and everything. The HOA went back and forth with me because they thought it looked like it went past my house like a couple inches, which it did not. I don't know if theirs was approved by the HOA. I know they showed me a paper that said a patio cover was approved, but I don't know if that was just the front patio cover or the side. So I'm just here trying to ask for your help because it's encroaching into my yard and it is very upsetting. And I know they talk about skin cancer and things. I have skin cancer. Like everybody has issues. So I just feel like they should be held accountable. They didn't follow the stop order. And they kept ignoring the city for months and months, and that's why it's a year now, it's starting to May.
Would you do me a favor? You may have already done it, I missed it. Would you state your name for the record?
Stacy Austin.
Okay, thank you. Okay, are there questions? Ms. Austin. Okay, and then, is this a picture, the one I have been looking at, is this a picture that you submitted? Okay. Is it, do you have any idea how far these are protruding over the wall? Because it looks like.
They're like on top of the wall, but as you walk, it looks like they're coming over.
Right, but there's a difference between how they look and what they are. Are they in fact over the wall?
No, they're on top of it.
So they're what we're seeing here then, if you go off one of these corners, it's not, in other words, if this table is the wall, what you're saying now, if I understand you correctly, is everything is matched to here, it's not extending 2 feet over into
Correct.
there. Okay. All right. Is there any question? Any other questions?
I still want to hear from the homeowner association.
Right. Well, we don't have them here today, so I don't think we have a subpoena process.
Somehow, they were led down a path that says they can do this.
So that's why, did you think you brought the approval?
We have the letter. Yes, we have it. It's in there.
Because I
Because I printed it out, and she's correct, I did bring it to her house to see if I could approval, that's why we were so confused about this whole situation.
Yeah.
It was, I mean, we would, none of us, we don't want to waste your time, we just thank you for your time, and we're sorry we're even here. I mean, that if we would have, like Nancy said, if we would have known, we would have never, this is the last thing that I want in my life, like, stressing out for
Well, but having a tentative approval from a homeowner association is really, the reality is that they're responsible.
That's what we said.
You know, it's
When
not,
I called, they said, if you're approved, and I said, I don't,
Actually, Ms. Austin, I was just curious, and that reminds me, I'm sorry, I sometimes process sort of slowly, but you said that you tried to receive HOA approval for a very similar pergola?
No, I had one that just goes in line with my own.
Okay, but you said something about it being a couple inches, they thought
Oh,
it was.
they thought it was, I guess, based on the pictures that were submitted, but it wasn't, and it was only like a couple inches they thought it was, but they were like, that can't be.
So you did install something that was like on, or you wanted to install something that was on?
No, I installed a pergola in line with my own.
Okay. And it's not like close to
It's
the.
not near anybody's house.
And I'm sorry, I'm so confused because they, on the design plan and stuff, that it looked like it was gonna go over.
Mm-hmm. Whatever I submitted in the email, I thought, but only by a couple of inches, and so that wasn't, and I said, it's weird because my neighbors have one that comes to the wall, and they said, well, that would not be permitted.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, well, let me make a comment. One of the problems that we have at times is a division of responsibilities, if you will, between the city and the HOA. And the bottom line is the city, under its code, could approve something. But if you're in a community that has CCNRs, the HOA can veto that proposal. On the other hand, in reverse, it doesn't matter what the HOA says from the standpoint of where we're going, because they can say, okay, we like this design, the design is approved. And most HOAs will then say, have you been to the city yet? And sending people along the way, because a lot of times, people sometimes try to gauge what they think is going to be the friendlier audience, go there first, and then go to the other. But one of the issues here that we have to struggle with, when staff is going through the 4 things that have to be approved, state law is very specific. If all 4 of those are not approved, we don't have authority to, approve the project. When I was in law school, the first year there was a course called Real Property. And we got to read about all of these cases that, like this, some of whom had made it to state Supreme Court. courts and, you know, but the real issue with all of that, normally what you think of on a variance is some kind of a lot, say at the back end of the subdivision, where you have a pie-shaped lot, and the owner can't do anything with the point of it, and if there's not some variance given to them, they can't build anything back there. So that's kind of what you normally think of. Then other times you get scenarios, which has come up over in Old Litchfield, where in the county days, pre-incorporation, there was a different zoning code. So sometimes you have, and then city came on, had its own zoning code, and there, over the years, there have been occasions where everybody in the neighborhood has built to the original less stringent county. And then there's one house that, for whatever reason, wasn't built that way, where they'd come in for a variance and said, hey, everybody else is doing this. And there's no question everybody else is doing it because it was approved back in 1968 or whatever. So we have to analyze this from the standpoint of going down the line. And like special circumstances, your lot is the same as every other lot. And if there were special circumstances, they can't be created by the owner. So building a gazebo or whatever we're going to call this without a permit from the city is sort of a self-imposed problem. And then if it's because of that, then I agree C doesn't apply. But there have been times where in an appropriate case, if people work really hard and can find a way to legitimately meet all four tests, sometimes it happens, but I'm just sort of, the other thing that struck me, I was looking at all of the letters that was submitted from people on this side. And the thing that everybody kept saying was, I've looked at it from the street, I've looked at it from the park or the back, and you can't see it. But unfortunately, the one place that nobody was saying was, what does it look like to the next door neighbor who have something sitting there? So I'm struggling with that. And like I said, I don't know what's going on over at the HOA because they absolutely should be, if they're approving anything and you haven't been to the city yet, they should be telling you it's okay by us, but you have to go to the city. And sometimes property owners, because there's a gap in time between when you file and when you get to your hearing, during the interim, we'll go over to the HOA, see if they can get that done, and then we'll come in and say it was approved by the HOA, and then if we have it in our records, we at least know that, but that's not the final answer. So, yes, I'm sorry, John.
Quite often going over to the building department, if you're working in the greens, or pretty much anywhere with the HOA, is they will give you, you can get the permit, but we can't give you the permit until we have a letter of approval from the HOA. So they gotta put both of those things together. Either the city puts it with the HOA, or the HOA puts it with the city. But you have to have those two items before they'll issue a permit.
So the one confounding thing is that the city does not require a building permit for small, like, is it under 100 feet or?
I think it's currently 200.
I don't do anything on it too.
You got, two of you had your mics off, so, but you don't need to repeat it, but if you're commenting, and I'm the worst one at not hitting the button, so.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions, comments?
Yeah, I guess I would just like to comment that, I agree with you were saying earlier about, in this case, I don't see the grounds for a variance, but I still am confused a little bit on whether or not they should even require a variance, assuming that it is not encroaching across their fence line, and the base of the structure is within the setbacks, because I really thought that we measured the base. And I understand that, like what you're saying, that typically that's because we're talking about awnings on a roof, but I think in practice, that's not how we're treating it, because there are pergolas that have, awnings that go up to the fence line. So I understand that the intent is for that, but I guess I feel like I'm unclear on how the city has been treating this particular part of the code. So I'm kind of torn about this one because I feel like we shouldn't really even, I think that it needs to be confirmed that, you know, it is not on the neighbor's side of the fence and that it's not, you know, exceeding the height requirement. And that it was installed in accordance with HOA guidelines, and whatever was submitted to them. But otherwise, I guess I don't see how this is even a violation from that perspective.
I do know that over the years, and things change, but over the years, it's been, if it's above 6 feet, then it's like 2 feet back for every foot above. And so it creates this angle of view, not a vertical thing. And so, especially that's where we're at right now in city council with trailers and mobile homes and that kind of thing is, what are you gonna do? Well, take a hole in your backyard and drop your trailer, your boat down in it and put a pump in it. You know, that's one way to accomplish it. But it's not to let it up there and let it be seen by all the neighbors. And so, and this is one of those things where it really, I can see that it would be offensive to the neighbor. I know it would be offensive to me. How's that?
Yeah.
It's the best I can do.
I mean, I think it's easy to see both sides.
Mhm.
Things
It
are
is.
pretty close to each other, unfortunately, so it's understandable that there's a conflict here, but.
Yeah, the other thing about setbacks also beyond aesthetics and visual is to have limits so that if a fire breaks out, that you do, you know, narrow area. And I'll give you an example. My wife and I, many years ago, bought a house up in Phase 1 of Arrowhead Range. And 25 years ago, Thanksgiving felt like Thanksgiving. It was cold. And on Thanksgiving Day, one of the houses a couple of blocks from us that were built very close together. I mean, I don't know, everything up there was built very close together. Somebody had a fire going all day long on Thanksgiving. And about an hour into dessert that night, their house caught on fire because the furnace wasn't properly installed and the metal got hot enough to set the house on fire. And I remember it distinctly because we saw the commotion and went running down there. At one point, one of the neighbors came that was next door, got his hose out, and his neighbor said, "Oh, great, I need the help." And he goes, "No, I'm hosing my house down. I can't help you with yours. I don't want mine to burn." But literally, if you look just as an example, the closer you get to these property lines, there's any number of other things too. And as we all, in smaller lots, if we all get close together, then you get more dog barking complaints, you get more of everything. But ultimately, it's not just aesthetics. There are fire and safety issues. But anyway, any other comments? Okay. And again, from the applicants, the objector, I would say, is very. So it brings me back to the applicants. You guys have the last opportunity or the last bite of the apple, as they say. So whichever one of you would like to present your closing, or you don't have to, but if you would like to, this is your opportunity to do that. Oh yeah, then we'll go. Let's hold up and just see, maybe there's somebody in the audience. Is there anyone in the audience that wanted to speak? Okay, I have. Did you turn it? Did you fill out?
I did not.
Okay, that's all right. Come on up here, just state your name for the record, so that we can get it into the record.
Hi, my name is Michael Wainer. I live at 14899 West Aldea Circle. I'm the neighbor to the neighbor. So, not really a character witness, but for both parties, I've known Stacy since we moved in. We're charter members of that neighborhood. We were sticks and bricks together. And then certainly the family here lived in the neighborhood since 2019. Their kids play with my dog, so really cool about that. I think thank you, Chair and Vice Chair, and to Board Member Dudley's comment though. I think the whole thing about the variance. I don't want to be relative because I haven't built anything yet. I've been in there since 2013 is when I closed. So I haven't built anything yet. This all makes me a little bit nervous. What is the standard? And it's pretty black and white. What is the standard for building in that neighborhood, regardless of what the HOA says? What does the city code say? Can anybody just share that?
Chair, sir, the subdivision plat was approved with 15-foot side yards total per lot. So with an added caveat that at least one side yard needs to be 5 feet. So it's basically 5 and 10. If there is a wider lot in your subdivision, then you might end up, depending on the width of the home, you could end up with like a 5 and 11 or 5 and 12.
Okay.
But it would be a minimum of 5
So
feet.
5 feet, yeah, so 5 feet. So I think the comment the board member made was, is it 5 feet from the post, in which in that construction project, it's not, it's like augured off the side of the house, right? And so where do we start the 5 foot measurement, right? To me, it's
Vertical wall.
okay. So I mean, basically, we're either, you know, on the line or we're not, right? We meet the 5 foot test or we don't. I think it's pretty. And for me as a homeowner, I'm selfish. Okay, I'll be the most honest person in this room. I'm selfish. What do I care about? My property value going forward. The proliferation of unpermitted structures all over the city, right? Because that just, again, you found evidence. I see that when I walk my dog. So but am I indicting Mr. Froke and the no, I'm not. But, you know, I'm the guy that follows the rule. I haven't built squat yet. And I don't intend to yet because of these proceedings. So I think that's the main thing, is my self-interest is I don't like to see issues in the neighborhood or signs posted. That's really upsetting to my wife and myself. We're just peaceful people. I go to work every day to pay my taxes. Do what I gotta do. And oh, by the way, I served 20 years in the Air Force too. So what I'm getting at is my interests are selfish. What do I do? How much trouble do I get in if I do it? And then what is the preservation right of my property value based on enforcement? So that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Quick comment about the signs. All zoning matters, and particularly variances, the city is required to post the signs to give notice to all the neighbors so people will know what's going on. So that's not done with any kind of evil intent, nor does it indicate that anybody did anything wrong. It just indicates they're making an application to the city. Okay, I think we had another person. Sir, go ahead up there and state your name if you would.
I'm David Bach, and I am a resident of Litchfield Park. I've got no axe to grind on this. I do live in that area, but to be honest with you, I'm just concerned, and I would say what this gentleman said, that's my concern, is that if we have a proliferation of this stuff going on, I believe it brings down the quality of the rest of our homes. When we bought in, we checked it pretty carefully about setbacks, about the regulations, and all of that stuff, and we felt pretty comfortable that, you know, this is a nice community. This would be a nice subdivision to live in. If people are abusing that, then I can't control that, but I don't think that's the right thing to do. And I'm not trying to pick on you people or anything like that. I would tell you this. I learned a long time ago, I'm not a lawyer, but when I went to some real estate classes, that your lot line goes from down here all the way up into heaven. That's your lot line. Can't be violated. Anything other than that has to be dealt with. So I learned that a long time ago, and I was always very careful in the homes that I owned. Be careful that I didn't encroach on anybody's property. I would tell you as a fact, because I know I've seen it. I've applied for permits from the HOA to make some modifications. And they're very clear on the bottom of the approval that it is subject to approval from the city of Litchfield Park. It doesn't say, oh, go ahead and start building, you're all set. It says this approval, and it could be just for putting in plants. It always says you're still subject to approval from the city of Litchfield Park. I think that when Mr. Womack brought up about that, the board, association possibly being liable for that. I don't see that because that letter is very clear. We're giving you approval, but you have to go to the city to get final approval on anything that you do. And then you have to look at what are the requirements at the city level. Do these have to be met? And those have to be dealt with. Regulations like this are meant for everybody, and they're meant for the benefit of all. All the concerns that I have, because I'm aware of another situation in our community, is that if there was ever a fire on that property, and the fire department had to get back to the back of that home to put out a fire, and that spot in that building or structure stood in the way, folks, you don't want to be responsible for that. I wouldn't want to be. I can't imagine how I would feel if something like that happened, and there were children in the back of the house or something that they couldn't get to. So again, I no axe to grind here. I feel for everybody that's involved, but I do think we need to be very careful about how we enforce what the city has for regulations. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, were there any other speakers? Okay, hearing none, we'll go back to the applicants. Do their closing argument.
I just wanted to address three things. First was the HOA approval. Daniel, I emailed that to you. Are you able to bring that up?
It's not even my
No. I mean, I just emailed to you right now.
Oh, just right now. Oh, yes, I.
And unfortunately, I don't have the application I sent. I'm pretty sure it was the same as I sent the city because I don't like doing extra work. However, it does have a number referenced on it, so if you did want to contact the HOA, hopefully they have that in their records. And I can do the same thing to try to get the packet that was submitted. But if you can bring it up, then. Should be a second. No, not that one. That was the second email down. I think you got one more guys in there. So you can see it was requested on the 20th, approved on the 23rd. Like I said, I don't have that application, however, it has a number for reference that hopefully we could get that packet on how approval is granted. On the non-permitted structure, I just wanted to address that I fully concur that pergola B is not permitted. I did not know I needed a permit when I had HOA approval. I could not obtain a permit until I went through the variance process and had the variance approved. So that's why it's gone on so long. And also, I would have to get the exact email date, but when Daniel sent me the variance request, I did submit questions on what am I asking for a variance for? And I didn't get a response for 5.5 months. And my response to him was, I assumed this had gone away. I apologize. I need time to gather myself after 5.5 months of not worrying about this to then regather. So that's why it's taken so long. And I do apologize for that, thinking it wasn't an issue anymore. And then I want to address the continue to work after the stop work notice because that's offensive to me. And I wonder if it was pergola A that was continuing to be worked on because we did obtain that permit within, I think, a week or two. So I can see where somebody who's not having a conversation and just looking over her fence that sees continued construction of pergola A, which was built after the stop work notice and a permit was issued for the city, could seem like we were disregarding the stop work notice when in fact that wasn't the case. I just wanted that on record. That's all I have. Thank you for your consideration.
Okay, thank you. Before we close the public hearing, any final questions, comments from the board? If not, we'll close the public hearing and then we'll go into the next item, which is deciding what course of action we want.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Is there a second? Okay, we got a motion and a second to close the public hearing. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, nay. None. So the public hearing is closed. So we will now move into deliberations. So any further discussion by the board?
I think that's a big deal for me, is that they got approval from the HOA without getting a permit. But the HOA allowed, or basically led them astray. And that's, I find that somebody screwed up. Not us, not saying the city, somebody screwed up.
Yeah, the other thing I would say, I can't tell from that what exactly was approved because we don't have the.
Well, it says patio cover, and then at the top it's, I'm just going by that, but that could have been pergola.
Yeah.
No,
We don't know.
I mean, it isn't particularly germane to this discussion because we're discussing whether a variance is appropriate. But I still maintain that if we measure from the vertical wall, then as long as they're on their property, they should not need a variance. So I will not argue that, you know, perhaps it's a little outside the name, or maybe there's some negotiation that can happen there, I don't know. But I still don't, I feel like I don't see where there's a variance here, because we measure from the vertical wall and it's 5 feet away, and they're in that, and they met the requirements, they should maybe get a confirmed from the city, which will take care of the fire code concerns and things like that, so that, I mean, you know, there's lots of factors here, but.
So there's setbacks on all subdivisions.
I know, yeah.
You know, you have 15 feet or 20 feet or 10 feet, whatever it is. There on that particular side, they have a 5-foot setback. You can't build in that 5 feet.
Yeah, but they didn't, because the base of the pergola is not protruding past 5 feet.
No, but the pergola itself is way
But you
past.
yourself
It's
just
out to
said-
zero.
Didn't you just answer the question that it had to start from the vertical wall, or we measured from the vertical
No,
wall?
that's the 5 feet.
That's the 5 foot, yeah,
Yeah.
so,
From the wall here, you have an overhang of like 2 feet.
okay.
That's
I think that's on the roof.
that's up on the roof, right? And you can't be beyond that. You can't be beyond the 5 feet, which is the vertical wall of the house to the wall to the fence line. You can't build in that 5 feet. I get in trouble if I put an air conditioner in that 5 feet.
But I'm confused, because the setback would be from the fence, the property line, right? Not the vertical wall.
We're talking about, I think we're talking about the same thing, calling it something different. This is a vertical wall. Okay, I can only go 5 feet out from that. That's where the fence line is. You can't do anything in that 5 feet, except plant some trees and shrubs.
Oh, so you're saying that there's a 5 foot, like, easement basically from
Correct.
your house, right,
Yes.
to where you can?
Yeah, that's a setback.
No, setback is from the fence line, I thought. It's the same thing.
Same thing,
Same
you're going the
thing
opposite
for the
direction.
situation.
I'm going from the house to the fence. You're talking about from the fence to the house.
Right,
Same thing. You can't build in that 5 feet.
okay, I understand, but if the house starts farther back, if the 5 feet is actually very much from the fence, that you can build something, like an auxiliary structure or something. I mean, in this case, I don't know, this isn't really an auxiliary structure, is it, but, I mean, a lot of times we're looking at like, awning, or not awnings, like, well, pergolas, but, ADUs or something like that, where it's
I
a
don't know what that
separate,
is anymore.
it's accessory dwelling unit, a casita.
Okay.
Right, and those oftentimes have to be 5 feet off the back fence, they can't be more than 10 feet, whatever, I mean, it's whatever the rules are of the,
Right.
back to the laws. And it's from the back fence that you're measuring where you can start building.
Yeah.
Yes.
It doesn't, if you don't start.
Sometimes their roofs do overhang,
Yeah.
but it's such a roof.
But aren't you?
But the roof is not, it's not included in that setback, that 5 foot setback.
Not the roof
Yeah.
overhang, correct.
The roof
It was not.
overhang, yeah.
So it seems to me in this case, this is like basically a roof overhang, they're not within the 5 foot setback where they built a vertical wall.
Except that it's not a roof overhang.
I mean, okay, but the same thing with the pergola, I mean, she showed us pictures of many pergolas that, the overhang pergola.
If you had a pergola accessory where you had the posts on the setback line, but their lattices overhang, they generally don't overhang all the way to the property line, but a little bit.
Yeah, but not 5 feet.
Yeah. And so
Yeah, I mean,
this is a little
they
bit-
are pushing the boundaries of it, that's why we're here, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, I think,
Well, here's my,
It's troublesome.
as I understand, the 5 feet, it's easier for me to think in terms of the house. So you've got a house, or whatever you're building with a vertical wall, and you've got 5 feet over to here, not necessarily the property. Or you can start over the property and go back 5 feet, but in this case, that area isn't, it's not there. So the way I looked at it, the reason I asked about this picture, just by the way it looked, I looked at the application for 5 feet, and it looked to me like it was a variance request for 5 feet plus 2. Variance to go from 5 to 0, but then they're over the line of maybe a foot or 2 into the neighbor's yard, so now you're talking about a different thing. But now I don't know from what we've heard, we've had conflicting testimony. That one visually is definitely looks, but I don't know what the measurement is on that either, because of all these ones we've seen.
Perspective shots are hard to tell.
Well, we had testimony tonight that said that they did a plumb bob from the end of the lattice work down to the center of the fence line. So I'm well convinced that is not over the property if the fence is on the property line, which we assume is.
I'm not sure. Okay, we're at that point where I think we need to do something one way or the other. Would someone like to make a motion?
May I ask you a question? Sure. Chair? They haven't met any of the 4 criteria. Do we still go to a vote? Or as long as they haven't met the 4,
Yeah.
what are we doing?
Well, under the law, they have to meet 4. So, but the vote would be, if that was where we were going, the vote would be to deny because the 4 considerations were not met. So we as a board would be making that finding that they had not met the requirements of the state law. It's not just, we can't just say they didn't we'd have to do a vote on whether or not
Yeah, we have
those
to
4 requirements.
disagree with staff.
Well, I'm voting, but I wasn't sure whether we needed to, if they don't meet all 4 of the requirements, it's required by state law, I think.
So we have to approve or deny.
Okay.
Based on the law. And if you disagree with staff, say you can find legal reasons to approve it based on the 4 conditions, and you can state that.
Okay.
And then Rachel's position is that she doesn't think it needs a variance because there's actual structural posts are not.
There are no posts, either way.
Yeah.
Well, I thought they mentioned there was one she said it was 5. I think the picture she showed it was clearly just
It's all
cantilever.
cantilever.
But I think, is there a post?
There's one post that's on pergola A.
That's pergola A, and that was approved.
Oh, but that's
There is a
different-
there's a
different
5
deal.
feet setback, so the lattices, and those were the pictures that I had shown, and that was what the confusion when I spoke to the neighbors. They all said that they either didn't even get HOA approval, the ones that I was able to get in those homes, or that they said the lattices, there's no setback, the setback is the post. So that's where all the confusion, and I know what you're talking about, it's like the lattices over on, that are, where if you build on the shared wall, right, it's a neighbor thing where, hey, if you want to add a brick, that's not an HOA, it's not a city, it's a neighbor issue, right? So the lattices are the problem is what the concern is. And that's when we were applying, and that's why when we asked Daniel, what's this variance for? Because we don't even see the problem, because we are within 5 feet with the setback of the percolating and the pole, so that was our confusion.
Ma'am,
Oh,
I'm sorry,
Sorry.
we're out of the hearing
Oh,
phase,
yes,
so
so
I
sorry.
need somebody to make a
Apologize.
motion. If someone wanted to make a motion saying that they have not met all 4 of the requirements, that would be essentially a motion to deny on the grounds that they have not met all 4 requirements. If someone thinks that we should approve, then their motion would be that they believe they have met all 4 requirements. But you'd have to state why you think each of those 4 were met. So, and there are some cases around the state where board of adjustments have gone to creative lengths to try to make something fit. This one, and it was acknowledged by them that as far as B goes, they didn't have, that one they agree it's not within the code, and they're looking for some way to resolve it. And I'm not sure we as a board can resolve it maybe there might be something they could do by going back to staff and maybe adjusting where that is sitting. I don't know whether that works or not, you know, I'm not an engineer. But right now, it's kind of a yay or nay.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to deny this application based on them not meeting the 4 criteria that are required by law, state law, someone's law.
Is there a second?
I'll second discussion.
Okay. Yeah, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And I will say that my aye, I'm sorry I had to do that. But I can see the neighbors' concerns as well. Because the impact of your project, all these other neighbors, it doesn't impact them one way or the other. The one person that it does impact isn't happy about it. But there may be something you can do, you know, staff is what it's saying, they basically would give you 90 days to remove it. During that period of time, you may want to talk with staff and see if there's something that could be done within the code. And I don't know whether there is or not. But
There may be something that would require a variance that would be.
yeah, something that would give you some shade that maybe would work. And it may not, because it looks like it's pretty tight in that space. But anyway, so, and again, I will say that what I said at the beginning, that it's important that, and you as the crowd, and thank you, everyone has been very respectful, we've had a good meeting. And all of these, somebody generally goes home unhappy, sometimes everybody goes home unhappy. But anyway, thank you, all of you, and we will now move on. I think on our agenda, we have. Under board adjustment minutes. Get a motion to approve it.
That's it?
I thought there was minutes.
To the chair, minutes were actually item A.
Oh, I was
Kind
on.
of just roll back into public hearing,
Okay.
so we can go back.
Yeah, let's go back. We get a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
A motion and second, all those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
At this point, we need a motion to adjourn this meeting, and then we can go into design review. Okay, motion and second to adjourn the board of adjustment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. So that closes this meeting, and then we'll move into design review.